a crooked cardboard sign, a lemonade stand no one stopped for, two kids fighting to buy back their mom's wedding ring, her last piece of hope before life swallowed it. Then one car stopped, and everything changed. What began as a desperate summer hustle turned into a viral movement, saving not just a ring, but an entire community's belief in love. From anonymous checks to a foundation helping kids nationwide, this isn't just a story about lemonade. It's about how two children proved kindness can ripple forever, one cup at a time. The cardboard sign was crooked, hand-lettered, in bold marker strokes that wobbled with the effort of little fingers. Lemonade, 50C, it read, and just below it, in smaller, shakier letters, help us buy back Mom's ring. It leaned against a rusted fold-out table that had seen better days, draped with a wrinkled yellow cloth and flanked by two mismatched lawn chairs. A large glass pitcher of lemonade, pale and sweating in the July sun, sat in the center, along with a stack of plastic cups and a blue tin cash box that rattled with a few lonely coins. 10-year-old Ellie stood behind the table, chin lifted, with a brave kind of determination that didn't quite match the nerves twitching in her small hands. She smoothed her hand-me-down T-shirt, pink and faded with a peeling unicorn decal, and looked to her little brother. Max, only 7, was already pouring their first cup of the morning with solemn purpose, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried not to spill. They had been out here since 9. The sidewalk in front of their apartment complex in suburban New Jersey wasn't exactly bustling, but it was all they had. Cars passed occasionally, slowing only at the intersection or to avoid the pothole that never seemed to get fixed. Most people didn't even glance at the kids or their sign. A few offered smiles tinged with pity, but no one had stopped yet. Ellie glanced at Max. He was shorter, scrawny even, with shaggy brown hair and big eyes that always seemed a little too serious for his age. Right now he was watching the road like a soldier on duty. "Think anyone will stop today?" he asked, not looking away. "They will," Ellie said, trying to sound confident. "We just need to stay out here long enough. Someone will." Max nodded, but his shoulders drooped just a little. Ellie noticed. She wanted to say more, something to lift him up. But she didn't have the words, not today. Instead, she picked up the old poster board sign and propped it more upright, trying to catch the attention of the next car that passed. They had set up this little stand every day for the past 2 weeks, right after their mom's wedding ring disappeared from her finger. Ellie still remembered the sound of their mom crying behind the bathroom door, her voice cracking into a whisper as she spoke into the phone with someone named Dave from Instant Cash Loans. She hadn't meant for them to hear, but walls were thin, and Ellie always listened. She knew what had happened, knew their mom had taken the ring, the one thing she had left from the life before their dad left and the bills started piling up, and pawned it for money to cover rent and groceries. She thought it was temporary. She'd get it back. She just needed a few weeks. But the weeks came and went. The pawn ticket sat on the kitchen counter, a reminder. Ellie saw her mom stare at it sometimes, her fingers brushing over it like she could will it into being whole again. But each time she'd sigh, slide it back beneath the calendar, and return to work. Sometimes one job, sometimes 2. Ellie knew it was up to them now. "We're going to get it back," she told Max that first night as they counted their piggy banks under the blanket fort in their shared bedroom. "We'll raise the money. We'll surprise her." She hadn't known how much they'd need at first, but when she snuck a peek at the pawn ticket, the number was written in red ink, $140, $140. It might as well have been $1 million. They had made $8.75 so far. Max poured another cup and set it carefully on the table. No one was there to take it, but he kept it ready, just in case. The heat pressed down harder as the sun climbed overhead. Ellie's shirt stuck to her back, and her ponytail clung to her neck. Still, she stood straight. She couldn't sit. She had to look determined, like someone worth helping. A woman walked by with a stroller, eyes shaded behind oversized sunglasses. She glanced at the sign, hesitated, and kept walking. Ellie felt the sting in her chest, but said nothing. Max lowered his head. Then, finally, a break in the monotony. A silver Toyota slowed as it approached, turn signal blinking. It pulled up beside the sidewalk, and a man rolled down the window. "You two selling lemonade?" he asked, smiling. "Yes, sir," Ellie said quickly, stepping forward. 50 cents a cup. It's cold." The man chuckled, handing over $1. "Keep the change." Max scrambled to pour a cup and deliver it with both hands like it was a sacred offering. The man took it, nodded his thanks, and drove away. Ellie dropped the dollar into the tin with exaggerated care. She made sure Max saw her do it, even though it was only one bill. His eyes lit up just a little, and he gave her a thumbs up. By noon, they had sold 5 more cups. A couple of teenage girls on bikes had bought some, mostly for the novelty, and a delivery driver in a FedEx uniform gave them a fist bump and paid with a $5 bill, refusing change. The total climbed slowly, agonizingly slowly. $12, then $17, then $19.50. They celebrated each milestone like it was a lottery win, but both knew the distance they still had to go. As afternoon crept in, clouds began to gather, thick, dark ones that promised summer rain. A low rumble echoed through the sky, and Ellie felt a pit form in her stomach. They couldn't pack up now. Not yet. They were just starting to get traction. "Maybe it'll pass," she said out loud, more to herself than Max. He looked up at her with wide, uncertain eyes. "What if it doesn't? Then we stay anyway." Thunder cracked closer this time. People started to move faster on the sidewalks. The street got quieter. By 3 p.m., a light drizzle had started. Ellie moved the pitcher closer to the middle of the table and wiped down the sign. Max covered the cups with an old dish towel. Still they stayed, and cars passed. People hurried by. Then, out of nowhere, it happened. A sleek black car, shiny, expensive, the kind Ellie only saw in magazines, slowed to a stop in front of them. The window rolled down, and a man with sharp features and dark hair leaned slightly out. "What's the story?" he asked, his voice calm but curious, gesturing toward the sign. Ellie swallowed hard. "We're raising money," she said, "to buy back our mom's wedding ring." The man looked at her for a long time. Something flickered in his expression. He opened his door and stepped out. Traffic behind him honked. A driver leaned out, shouting, but the man didn't flinch. He crossed the sidewalk and crouched to their eye level, ignoring the growing storm. "How much do you need?" he asked. Ellie blinked. $140? He nodded slowly. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black wallet. When he handed her the bills, 3 crisp 50s, Ellie thought she might faint. Max's mouth opened in shock. The man smiled. "Keep doing good things," he said. Then he turned back to his car, stepped in calmly, and pulled away, leaving behind stunned children, a rattling cash box, and traffic frozen for an entire block. The storm broke moments later, soaking the sidewalk and scattering the last of the foot traffic. But Ellie and Max didn't care. They clutched the money like a miracle, hearts pounding, soaked to the bone, and smiling like they'd never smiled before. The ring could come home now, and with it maybe something even bigger than hope. The pawn shop smelled of stale air and old secrets. The bell above the door jingled with a reluctant chime as Ellie pushed it open, Max trailing close behind, clutching the plastic cash box like it was the Ark of the Covenant. The hum of a fan buzzed in the corner, barely cutting through the summer humidity, and glass cases lined the walls, each filled with remnants of desperation. Watches that no longer ticked, chains once worn proudly, cameras with dust settling into their lenses. Behind the counter stood Dave, the man their mom had whispered about that night on the phone. He looked older up close, his graying stubble uneven and shirt collar damp with sweat. A cigarette dangled unlit from the corner of his mouth as he glanced up, eyebrows lifting when he saw two kids standing there with solemn expressions and wet shoes. "You two lost?" he asked, voice gravelly. Ellie stepped forward. Her knees trembled under her jeans, but she didn't let it show. "We came to buy back our mom's ring." Dave blinked once, then straightened up. "Your mom's ring?" "She pawned it," Max said, standing beside his sister now, eyes big and steady. "We have the ticket and the money." Ellie pulled the folded slip of paper from her pocket and slid it across the glass counter. Dave picked it up, scanned it, then glanced at them both again. "Catherine Brooks, wedding band, gold, 1 small diamond." His voice softened slightly. "She your mom?" They nodded. "You kids raise this money yourselves?" Ellie opened the cash box. It was a patchwork of small bills and change, and the 3 crisp 50s placed carefully on top. She nudged it forward. Dave studied them for a moment longer, then exhaled slowly. "Wait here." He disappeared into the back room, the curtains swaying behind him. Max looked up at his sister, whispering, "Do you think he still has it?" Ellie didn't answer. She stared at the counter, heart pounding, fists clenched at her sides. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Dave returned. In his hand was a small black velvet box. He set it down gently and opened it. The ring sat nestled inside like something sacred, delicate and simple. A thin gold band with a single diamond that glinted even under the dull fluorescent lights. Ellie let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Max's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. "That's it," he whispered. "That's Mom's." Dave picked up the box and handed it across the counter. 140, he said. "Looks like you've got it." Ellie handed over the money, and he began counting with slow, practiced fingers. When he was done, he nodded once. "Tell your mom," he paused. "Just tell her not everyone gets a second chance with something they let go." Ellie didn't fully understand what he meant, but she nodded anyway. Max took the ring box, holding it with both hands like it was spun from glass. As they left the shop, the rain had finally stopped, leaving behind glistening puddles and a strange kind of golden light that filtered through the clouds like the world had been reset. They ran all the way home. When they burst through the apartment door, their sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, their mom was in the kitchen stirring something on the stove. Her tired eyes widened when she saw them, soaked and breathless. "Where have you two been? I've been worried." Ellie stepped forward and held out the small box. Catherine froze. She reached out with shaking hands, opening it slowly, as if she were afraid it might vanish. Her fingers touched the ring, and for a moment she couldn't speak. "How?" her voice cracked. "We raised the money," Ellie said simply. "Lemonade stand." Catherine looked between them, blinking hard. "You raised this? By yourselves?" Max nodded proudly. "We sold cups for 50 cents. Some people gave us more. A man in a black car gave us 50 times 3. Catherine pressed the ring to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I pawned this to pay rent," she whispered. "I thought I could buy it back, but the electric bill came, and then groceries, and—" She looked at them both. "I thought it was gone forever." "We didn't want it to be," Ellie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was from before, when we were all still together. It matters." Their mom fell to her knees and pulled them both into a hug so tight they could barely breathe. But they didn't mind. That night Catherine wore the ring again, not for the world to see. She didn't go out much anymore, but because it felt like having a piece of herself back, like something broken had been mended, not just with money, but with the fierce love of two kids who refused to let go. They ate macaroni and cheese for dinner and toasted with juice boxes, giggling over the idea of being rich now. Max insisted on keeping the cardboard sign and the picture just in case they needed to raise money again someday. But the next morning brought something no one expected. It started with a knock. Catherine opened the door to find a woman in a blue blazer holding a microphone. Behind her was a man with a camera. "Are you Catherine Brooks?" the reporter asked. She hesitated. "Yes. I'm Tanya Whitmore with Channel 8 News. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your children's lemonade stand. We heard they raised money to buy back a pawned wedding ring. Is that true?" Catherine blinked, confused, and suddenly very self-conscious in her threadbare T-shirt and sleep-mussed hair. "How did you—" "Social media," Tanya said with a smile. "Someone recorded them yesterday when that man in the car stopped traffic. The video's gone viral. Nearly 500,000 views in 12 hours. Catherine stared at her. Behind her, Ellie and Max peeked around the corner. "What's viral?" Max whispered. "Means famous," Ellie replied. Over the next 2 days, their story was everywhere. News vans parked outside the complex. Neighbors they barely knew stopped by with cookies and congratulations. A local bakery offered to sponsor the next lemonade stand. A car dealership offered to match the remaining rent for the year. And then, one morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single line, "Thank you for reminding me what matters," and a check for $10,000. Catherine sat at the kitchen table staring at it like it might combust. Ellie watched her, chewing the edge of her thumbnail. "What does it mean?" "It means," Catherine said slowly, "we might finally get a second chance." But she folded the check carefully and tucked it away. "We're not cashing it just yet," she said. "Not until I know who sent it." She never found out. But the wedding ring stayed on her finger, and the lemonade sign stayed taped to the bedroom wall. A relic of the summer when 2 kids changed everything by refusing to give up on what mattered most. By the following week, their neighborhood had changed. Not physically, no one fixed the cracked sidewalks or repainted the peeling fences, but something in the way people moved had shifted. They nodded more, smiled longer. Even the landlord, who usually grunted instead of saying hello, had asked Ellie how the lemonade stand was going and if Max was still her little business partner. The video had continued to make the rounds online. At first, it was just shares on Facebook, then a repost on a local community blog. But when a popular TikTok influencer stitched it with a tearful commentary about the resilience of children and the broken system they live in, everything exploded. Overnight, the story moved from feel-good filler to viral symbol. People tagged it under #LemonadeForLove and Ring Revival. It was surreal. Catherine started getting letters. Some came with small donations, $5 bills folded in notebook paper, short handwritten notes from people who had lost wedding rings of their own or sold them in hard times. Others simply thanked her kids, thanked them all for reminding people of what love looked like when life was hard. But through it all, Ellie and Max stayed grounded. They still set up the lemonade stand every afternoon, even after they had bought back the ring, even after Channel 8, Channel 4, and a podcast producer named Jules all tried to convince them the story was over. "We're not done," Max told a reporter one afternoon as he arranged cups with scientific precision. "There's still other people who need help." Ellie nodded in agreement. "We thought we were just doing it for Mom, but maybe it's bigger now." And so it was. On a Wednesday afternoon, a woman stopped by the stand with a stroller and a tired look in her eyes. She handed Ellie $1 and asked for 2 cups. "You okay?" Ellie asked as she poured. The woman hesitated. "Honestly? Not really. But you 2 remind me of my kids. They're staying with my mom right now because I had to pick up extra shifts." Ellie handed her the lemonade. "It gets better," she said, like she was reciting something from memory. "Sometimes it takes a while, but it gets there." The woman looked at her for a long time, then smiled with the kind of weariness only adults who've been through storms can manage. "Thanks, kid. I needed that." Moments like that began to stack up, one customer at a time. Some left tears, some left tips, some left promises they'd start helping others too. But even as the community rallied and the story grew, life at home was still real. Rent still came due. The fridge still needed filling. Catherine had started working nights at the diner again. Not ideal, but better than nothing. Her shifts ran long, and her back ached from standing. But she came home smiling, always with a kiss for both kids, and a whispered promise that things were turning. One Friday, Ellie woke up to find a brown envelope slipped under the door. No name, no writing. Inside was another check, this one for $20,000. Catherine sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at it like it might scream if she moved too fast. "It's too much," she said, her voice trembling. "We can't accept this." "But we could fix the car," Max said quietly, "and maybe you wouldn't have to work nights anymore." Catherine looked at her children, both in pajamas, hair tousled from sleep, still innocent enough to believe the world might finally start to be kind to them. She swallowed hard. "I need to think." She spent the next 3 days calling banks, consulting with a friend from high school who was now a paralegal, and asking questions about anonymous donations. No one could trace it. There were no strings. It wasn't from a nonprofit or a PR stunt. It had just arrived. When Catherine deposited the check, the bank teller stared at her for a long time, as if trying to decide whether she was making a mistake or living a miracle. But the deposit cleared. They used a portion of it to pay off their credit card debt and cover rent for the rest of the year. The old sedan, long past its prime, got a full service and a new set of tires. And for the first time in months, Catherine bought groceries without checking the balance in her account mid-aisle. They still clipped coupons. They still skipped takeout. But something had shifted. One night after dinner, Ellie sat on the edge of her mom's bed as Catherine read through a stack of notes from people who had sent mail after seeing the video. "I didn't know people could be like this," Ellie said softly. Catherine looked up. "Like what? Kind? Generous? Just showing up when you don't even ask?" Her mother smiled. "Most people are better than we give them credit for, but sometimes it takes a spark." Ellie tilted her head. "Are we the spark? You and Max?" Catherine leaned over and kissed her daughter's forehead. "You lit a fire." Still, not all the attention was simple. One evening, a car pulled up outside the apartment. A man in a suit stepped out, looking distinctly out of place amid the cracked sidewalk and leaning fences. He held a leather briefcase and walked to their door with confident strides. Catherine opened it cautiously. "Ms. Brooks?" he asked. "Yes." "I represent Franklin and Miles Media Group," he said, handing her a business card with embossed lettering. "We'd like to discuss a book deal, possibly a children's series. Your family's story has resonated deeply with a nationwide audience, and we believe there's potential to extend the message." Catherine blinked. "A book?" "Yes," he said smoothly. "Perhaps a children's book or a memoir. We can assign a ghostwriter. All we need is your permission." She looked past him into the parking lot where her kids were jumping rope, laughing, then back at the man. "I'll think about it," she said, and closed the door before he could say more. Later, when she explained it to Ellie and Max, they stared at her like she was speaking another language. "Books?" Ellie asked. "Like in a library?" "Maybe," Catherine said, "but not yet. Not unless it's something we all want." Max frowned. "Can we still sell lemonade, though?" Catherine laughed. "Yes, Max, you can still sell lemonade." Over time, things quieted again. The news vans left. The viral post faded into memory. The world moved on, but not entirely. Their lemonade stand became a fixture, not because of fame, but because of choice. Kids from the neighborhood began helping, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for a whole afternoon. They wore bright T-shirts that said "Lemonade for Love" and brought their own pitchers and folding tables. The little patch of sidewalk in front of the apartment turned into something more, a place where stories were exchanged, where kindness was the currency, where people came not for the drink but for the reminder. And as summer turned to fall, Ellie and Max still stood there most days, a new sign painted with fresh colors, 50C, lemonade, for hope, not just thirst. And beneath it, in Max's unmistakable block letters, still helping Mom, still helping others. The miracle hadn't been in the ring, or the checks, or even the video. The miracle had been in the lemonade stand that never gave up, and the hearts that kept it going. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon in early September when something unexpected happened again. The kids were back in school, which meant the lemonade stand operated only in the late afternoons now, once homework was done and the sun had begun to soften. Ellie and Max had agreed on new shifts between themselves, each taking turns manning the table and stirring the lemonade in the kitchen. On that particular day, Ellie was outside alone. Max was inside finishing his math assignment while their mom folded laundry in the next room, humming a tune from A Happier Time. The air was cooler now, touched by the early hints of autumn, and fallen leaves skittered across the sidewalk like small rustling whispers of change. Ellie adjusted her hoodie sleeves and took another long look down the street. No customers yet. She didn't mind. Sometimes she liked the waiting. Then she saw him. The man was tall, older than most who stopped by, with a cane in one hand and a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His coat was frayed at the sleeves, and his shoes were scuffed down to uneven soles. But it wasn't his appearance that caught Ellie's attention. It was the way he looked at the sign. Not a glance, not a quick smile. He stopped walking completely and stared, lips pressed together, eyes blinking slowly like they were remembering something from long ago. Ellie stood up straighter. "Hi, sir," she called out gently. "Would you like some lemonade?" He looked at her, really looked. Then he stepped forward, leaning on his cane as he approached the table. "How much?" he asked. "Still 50 cents, but," she replied, her voice bright and clear. He reached into his pocket, then frowned as his fingers came up empty. He patted his coat and checked again. I'm sorry. I thought I had—" His voice trailed off, embarrassed. He began to back away. Ellie shook her head quickly. "You don't have to pay," she said. "We give it free sometimes for people who look like they need it." The man's eyes softened. "That's so?" She nodded, already pouring a cup. "Here." He took it with both hands. "That's very kind of you." They stood there in silence for a moment as he took a long sip. Then he sighed. "Your sign, helping Mom, helping others. That's real?" Ellie smiled. "Yes. We started the stand to help buy back her wedding ring. Now we use the money to help other people, too. For bills, groceries. Once we even helped someone fix their bike." The man's expression changed, just slightly, but enough. There was something deep in his eyes, something that flickered between gratitude and grief. "You know," he said quietly, "I had a daughter once. She sold snow globes in the winter when she was your age. Said it was her way of paying back the universe." "What happened to her?" Ellie asked gently. He looked down. "She's gone now, long time ago." Ellie didn't know what to say, so she stayed quiet. Sometimes people didn't need answers, just someone to listen. The man finished his lemonade and set the cup down carefully. "You're doing something good here," he said. Ellie nodded. "So are you, by remembering her." He smiled, a slow, quiet smile that didn't quite reach his eyes but tried to. He turned to walk away but paused after a few steps. "I never caught your name." "Ellie? I'm Walter." He tipped his chin in a sort of old-fashioned salute. "Thank you for the drink, Ellie." She watched him disappear down the street. The moment stayed with her for the rest of the evening. Later, when she told her mom and Max about the man with the cane, her mom grew quiet. "I knew someone like that once," Catherine said softly. "A veteran. Carried everything he owned with him. Never asked for help, but always gave thanks when someone offered it." "Do you think he had anywhere to go?" Ellie asked. Catherine looked out the window at the darkening sky. I hope so, but if not, maybe your lemonade was exactly what he needed. That night, Ellie dreamed about a train station filled with people from different times and places, some in coats, some in pajamas, some with briefcases, others with nothing at all. They all stood in line for lemonade. And behind the stand was Max, pouring it with a grin, and her mom counting sugar cubes, and Ellie herself holding out a cup to someone just arriving through the fog. She woke up before she saw the person's face. By Saturday, Max had a new idea. "What if we do a big day?" he said over breakfast, cereal crunching between each word. Like a lemonade celebration day, with posters and music and stuff." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "You mean like a block party?" "Yeah, but with lemonade. And we could raise even more. Maybe help the animal shelter this time." Ellie liked it. "We could ask Mr. Donnelly to bring his guitar again, and Miss Carla makes really good cookies. She'd probably bake some." Catherine looked between them, her face softening with that same glow it always had when she watched them build something from scratch. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." The three of them spent the weekend making plans. They drew flyers with neon markers and posted them on lampposts and mailboxes. Ellie even went to the community center to ask if they could borrow folding chairs. Max convinced their neighbor, Mrs. Gray, to lend them her Bluetooth speaker. By the following weekend, the Lemonade Day celebration was ready. And people showed up, more than they'd ever imagined, not just from their block, but from others too. Some said they'd heard about the original video. Others just came because they'd seen the posters. There were kids with painted faces and older couples who brought their own lawn chairs. Someone brought a cooler full of popsicles. A teenage boy offered free haircuts near the sidewalk. And right in the middle of it all stood Ellie and Max, pouring lemonade, counting change, and offering second cups with laughter and stories. Walter came too. Ellie spotted him just past noon, standing near the edge of the crowd, leaning on his cane and watching quietly. She waved him over. "I don't have—" he began. "I know," she said, already pouring a cup. "You still get one." He took it, smiled, sat down beside her table on the milk crate they kept for emergencies, and for a long time he just sat there, watching the kids run by, listening to the music, breathing in a moment he didn't think he'd get again. Before he left, he reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. "I want you to have this," he said. Ellie blinked. "What is it?" He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small silver snow globe. Inside the glass, a tiny girl stood beside a pine tree, arms lifted as if catching snowflakes. "My daughter gave this to me the Christmas before she passed," he said softly. "It's time it brought someone else some peace." Ellie took it reverently. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Positive." Max looked at the snow globe and whispered, "It's beautiful." "It was hers," Walter said. "Now it's yours." As he walked away, Ellie held the snow globe against her chest. The sun dipped lower. The music faded. But the memory of lemonade and laughter and loss and gift-giving stayed like something permanent, something worth carrying, something you don't sell, not even in hard times. You just give it. And maybe, somehow, the giving makes you whole. The next morning, sunlight poured through the thin curtains like a soft promise, warming the tiny apartment with golden light. Ellie woke to the faint sound of clinking dishes and laughter, unmistakably her mom and Max in the kitchen. It was the kind of sound that used to be rare, a once-in-a-blue moon type of thing. But lately, it had started showing up more often, like the house itself was beginning to breathe again. She sat up, rubbing her eyes and squinting toward the hallway. The aroma of toast and scrambled eggs drifted in, along with the faintest scent of lemon. Somehow it clung to everything now, as if the lemonade stand had taken permanent residence in their lives. As she stepped into the kitchen, she found Max perched on a stool with a dish towel over his shoulder, mimicking a line cook, while Catherine flipped eggs like a professional. "Well, look who's awake," her mom said with a grin. "Sleep okay?" Ellie nodded and took a seat. "I dreamed about the stand again." Max turned dramatically. "Was it the one where the cups never ran out and we had customers from space?" Ellie grinned. "Not that one. This time we were helping someone build a house, with lemonade money." Catherine smiled to herself. "You two really think anything's possible, don't you?" Ellie didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Don't you?" Catherine paused mid-stir, eyes softening. "Lately, I'm starting to." Later that day, Catherine checked the mailbox and returned with a stack of envelopes. Most were the usual, ads, a bill or two, but one had a seal on it, embossed, expensive looking. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter from the mayor's office. Ellie watched her mom's expression shift from surprise to disbelief to something near tears. "What is it?" Max asked, climbing up beside her on the couch. Catherine started, then laughed softly, pressing a hand to her mouth. "They want to honor you, the both of you, a city commendation for community service, and they want to do it on the courthouse steps." Ellie blinked. "Like in public?" Max grinned. "Like superheroes?" "They want you to come to City Hall," Catherine said. "A little ceremony, a speech, and they're naming the weekend after you. Lemonade for Love Weekend." The kids stared at her, wide-eyed. Is this real?" Ellie asked. Catherine held up the letter. "Looks pretty official." The ceremony was scheduled 2 weeks later. In the days leading up to it, the community buzzed with excitement. Kids in the neighborhood made signs. Local shops offered to donate lemonade for a free giveaway table. A custom T-shirt shop surprised the family by printing shirts with "Lemonade for Love" and Ellie and Max's names in bold yellow across the front. Catherine bought the kids new clothes for the event. Nothing too fancy, just clean and proud. She even borrowed a dress from a coworker at the diner, something simple and navy blue that made her feel like the version of herself she hadn't seen in a mirror since before everything fell apart. The morning of the ceremony, they stood outside the courthouse in a small crowd. It wasn't massive, maybe 40 people, but it felt big. There were cameras, microphones, reporters with warm smiles, and clipboards. Catherine's hands trembled a little as she adjusted Max's collar and smoothed Ellie's hair. "You too nervous?" she asked. Max bounced on his toes. "Nope, just excited." Ellie took a deep breath. "A little." The mayor, a tall woman with a kind smile and a firm handshake, stood at the podium. She spoke first about the city, about community, then about the lemonade stand. "Sometimes the greatest acts of service don't come from boardrooms or campaign platforms," she said. "They come from children with cardboard signs and hand-squeezed dreams." The crowd chuckled softly, touched. "These two young people reminded us what it means to care," the mayor continued, "to give, to love without expectation. And so, today, we honor them." Ellie and Max stepped forward, cheeks flushed, eyes wide, as the mayor presented them with certificates in gold frames and a small silver plaque etched with their names. The crowd clapped. Catherine wiped her eyes. Afterward, people crowded around for photos. A woman from the local paper interviewed Ellie, asking what she wanted to do when she grew up. Ellie thought for a second. "Help people," she said simply. "However I can." Later that night, they returned home exhausted but glowing. The awards were placed carefully on the small shelf in the living room next to the snow globe Walter had given them. They had dinner, leftover pasta and garlic bread, and afterward, Catherine lit a single candle on the table. "To the two bravest kids I know," she said, raising her glass of juice. Ellie and Max lifted theirs too. "To lemonade," Max declared. "To love," Ellie added. They clinked their glasses together. That weekend, as part of the city's proclamation, booths lined the local park with lemonade stands from kids all over the district. Some were decorated with streamers and glitter, others with banners and homemade flags. A few used store-bought mix, but many had followed Ellie and Max's original recipe: lemons, sugar, water, and heart. Ellie and Max had their own booth too, of course. This time, they weren't just raising money, they were collecting stories. "Why are you selling lemonade today?" Ellie asked a small girl in overalls who came to visit. "To buy books for our school library," the girl said proudly. Max scribbled it down on the poster board they'd labeled "Reasons That Matter." Another boy said, "I want to raise money for my grandpa's medicine." One little girl whispered, "I want to help my mom smile again." By the end of the day, their poster board was filled with messages, some messy, some poetic, all real. The event ended with music, dancing, and laughter. Kids raced across the grass while adults mingled and sipped lemonade from paper cups. As the sun dipped low, the mayor returned, placing a gentle hand on Catherine's shoulder. "You should be very proud," she said. "I am," Catherine replied, voice thick. "More than I can say." The mayor turned to Ellie and Max. "You two started something," she said, "and I think it's just the beginning." That night, as they packed up the booth, Ellie looked at the sign they'd made, the one with all the reasons. She held it close, brushing her fingers over the words. "What do we do with it now?" Max asked. Ellie looked up at the stars beginning to pepper the sky. "We keep it," she said, "so we remember why we started." And as they walked home, lemonade sticky fingers wrapped in their mom's hands, the world around them felt different, not because it had changed all at once, but because they had changed something in it, one cup at a time. Fall settled into their little neighborhood slowly, slipping in with chilly mornings and golden trees that lined the sidewalks like patient sentinels. The lemonade stand, once a summer centerpiece, remained active despite the cooler weather, its purpose evolving with the season. Now Ellie and Max served warm cider alongside lemonade, the steam rising from paper cups like little ghosts. Catherine had found more stable hours at a nearby office thanks to a connection from the mayor's assistant, who had quietly passed along her resume after the ceremony. It wasn't glamorous, clerical work mostly, but it paid on time and came with a coffee machine and co-workers who asked about her kids. She still worked evenings at the diner occasionally, but not because she had to, because she wanted to help out. Their life, once dictated by survival, now had room for choice. That was the biggest change, the freedom to breathe. One Thursday afternoon, Ellie sat behind the cider stand, bundled in a scarf and oversized jacket, her sketchbook open beside the cash tin. She'd begun drawing people who visited them, faces with stories, smiling customers, children clutching cups like they held treasure. She didn't tell anyone yet, but she had an idea. A children's book, a real one, filled with portraits and short stories of kindness. Maybe she'd call it One Cup at a Time. Max arrived shortly after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, cheeks red from the wind. "Mrs. Garner let us paint pumpkins today," he announced, pulling a small orange orb from his bag and setting it proudly on the table. He'd painted it yellow and drawn a smiling lemon face on it, complete with sunglasses. Ellie laughed. "Lemo? Lemo the lemon. He says we're doing great." They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, greeting customers and serving cider. Business had slowed with the weather, but their stand had become a landmark now. People came by just to say hello, to ask how the family was doing, to leave small donations with handwritten notes. As the sun began to dip, a woman appeared at the edge of the sidewalk. She was older, maybe in her 70s, wearing a tailored coat and walking with a polished cane. Her white hair was swept into a bun, and a string of pearls lay gently across her collar. She looked like someone who belonged in a mansion with marble staircases, not standing near a folding table on a cracked sidewalk, but there she was. Ellie stood up instinctively. "Good evening, ma'am." The woman's eyes sparkled. "Is this the famous lemonade stand?" Max puffed up proudly. "Yes, ma'am. We're Ellie and Max." She smiled. I'm Gladys, and I've wanted to meet you two ever since my niece showed me your story on her phone." Ellie blushed. "It's not that big a deal." Gladys tilted her head. "Child, it's a bigger deal than you realize. What you started here, it's rare. It's needed." She reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope. Not thick, just a single, neatly folded letter. "I came to give you this," she said, handing it to Ellie. "You can read it later. Just know that what you've done here, it helped more people than you'll ever meet." Max frowned. "Did we help you too?" Gladys paused, her gaze growing far away. "Yes, more than you'll ever know." She bought 2 cups of cider, tipped generously, and disappeared as suddenly as she'd come. Later that night, Ellie opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter, written in looping script. "Dear Ellie and Max, I lost my daughter 3 years ago to illness. Since then, the world has felt quieter, colder. She used to believe in small gestures, changing everything. Your story reminded me that she might have been right. Thank you for bringing light back to a stranger's day. I don't need anything from you, just wanted you to know that you gave me hope again, and that's something even money can't buy. Gladys M." Ellie read it twice before handing it to her mom. Catherine didn't speak, but tears shone in her eyes as she folded the paper and placed it gently in the family's keepsake box, the same one where they now stored the snow globe, the framed news clipping, and the faded pawn shop ticket, its numbers barely visible anymore. Weeks passed. Halloween came and went. Thanksgiving brought neighbors with shared dishes and laughter echoing down the hallways of their building. It was their first real holiday in years, one not shadowed by worry. December arrived with its hush of snow. Max suggested they switch to hot chocolate for the winter, and Ellie created a new sign with glittering silver letters, "Winter Warmth Stand, 1 cup at a time." They offered whipped cream and tiny marshmallows. Customers kept coming. And then, right before Christmas, the most unexpected letter arrived. It was from the estate of a man named Walter Aldridge. Catherine read it aloud at the kitchen table, her hands shaking. "To the Brooks family, my client, Mr. Walter Aldridge, passed away peacefully on December 12th. In his will, he requested that a portion of his estate be donated to the children who made me feel human again. Enclosed is a check in the amount of $25,000 to be used for their education and well-being. He spoke of your kindness often. His snow globe, he said, had found the right hands. With sympathy and admiration, Grace Layton, Esquire." The room fell silent. Max stared at the letter. He left us money?" Ellie clutched the snow globe gently, tears spilling before she realized they'd come. Catherine closed her eyes. He remembered. They didn't use it all at once. They opened savings accounts for Ellie and Max, something to build toward college or whatever dreams they chose to chase. They made a donation to the local shelter Walter used to visit. And they added a small bronze plaque to their stand. "In memory of Walter Aldridge, you were seen. You were loved." That winter, as snowflakes twirled through the quiet and the streets glowed with soft light, the little family sat around their table with cups of cocoa and hands clasped together. The ring was still on Catherine's finger. The snow globe still stood on the mantel. And outside, just visible through the frosted window, their stand waited, steady and patient, ready for another day. Another cup, another person who needed to believe the world could be kind. The new year arrived not with a bang, but a whisper. Snow still clung to the rooftops like old stories, and icicles hung from porch edges like chandeliers crafted by winter's hand. The stand, once the beating heart of their summer street, now stood folded in the corner of the storage closet near their front door, the sign neatly preserved behind plastic, the lemon-painted pumpkin slightly shriveled but still smiling from a windowsill. School had resumed. Life resumed. But nothing was quite the same. Not in their home, not in their neighborhood. Ellie found herself changed in ways she couldn't yet name. She walked the hallways of her school with quieter confidence, as if the world had pulled back its curtain and revealed a softer center. Max, once shy and unsure, now walked up to new kids at recess and invited them into games without hesitation. Their world had widened, and with it came a different kind of awareness. One afternoon in late January, Catherine picked the kids up from school in their old but now dependable sedan. Max climbed into the back seat, chattering about a science project involving baking soda and balloons. Ellie slid into the front with her sketchbook tucked beneath her arm. "You've been drawing a lot lately," Catherine said, smiling as she pulled onto the road. "I'm working on something," Ellie replied. "A book, kind of." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "A book?" Ellie opened the sketchbook to a page near the middle. It featured a scene of the lemonade stand with Walter sitting beside it, snow globe resting gently in his hands. Beneath the picture, in neat cursive, she had written, "Sometimes kindness is the only currency a person has left. Spend it freely." Catherine's eyes welled. Ellie flipped another page. It showed Max with his lemon-faced pumpkin. Another featured their mom holding the pawn ticket and looking out the window, a silhouette of the wedding ring glowing faintly in the corner. "I want to tell the story," Ellie said, "but not just what happened, what it meant." Catherine reached over and took her daughter's hand. "You already are." That weekend, Max suggested they set up the stand again, just for a day, even if it was cold. "We haven't done it since before Christmas," he said. "People might think we stopped caring." Ellie agreed. They borrowed a space heater from their neighbor and hung handwritten signs around town. "One day winter stand, hot cocoa and kindness, come share your story." It was bitter cold when they set up. Catherine insisted on triple layering their clothes. She herself wore 2 scarves, gloves over gloves, and a knit hat that didn't match her coat but made her laugh when she saw her reflection. "Don't worry," she told Ellie, grinning. "No one's coming to photograph us this time." But people came anyway. They came with frozen fingers and rosy cheeks. They came with stories, laughter, and quiet thanks. Some came with nothing at all but their presence. One woman arrived with her teenage son and slipped a note into the tip jar that simply read, "You helped my daughter find the strength to come home." Another man brought a small box. Inside was a pair of baby shoes. "My daughter's 6 now," he said. "We almost lost our house last year. Then someone told us about your story, and it helped us keep going. These were her first. I want you to have them." Max stared at the shoes in reverent silence. "We'll keep them safe," he promised. Ellie set up a corkboard behind their stand and began pinning every note, every story, every photograph people brought them. She titled it Proof. Proof, she said, that kindness worked. That hope wasn't wasted. It became a tradition. Each month, even if just for a day, they reopened the stand. Sometimes it was at the park, other times in front of the community center. They adapted with the seasons: lemonade, cider, cocoa, even fruit punch in spring. Always 50 cents, always optional. People brought their burdens and their joys. They donated stories. They left pieces of themselves behind, tucked into Ellie's sketchbook, folded into Max's apron, engraved on Catherine's heart. By April, Ellie's book had grown into something more than sketches and scribbled thoughts. A local teacher, moved by the story, offered to help them self-publish. Donations poured in to cover the costs. They printed 100 copies. They sold out in 3 days. By June, they'd printed a second run. A local bookstore offered to host a reading. Catherine was nervous, but proud. Ellie stood at the podium that Saturday, Max beside her, and read aloud from the chapter titled "The Day the Car Stopped." People cried, people laughed. And when Ellie closed the book, the room stood in ovation. Later, a woman in a wheelchair rolled up to her with watery eyes. "My son used to run a lemonade stand," she said. "He passed 3 years ago. Your book. It gave me a piece of him back." Ellie hugged her without a word. That night, back at home, Catherine curled up on the couch with her children tucked beside her. They flipped through the newly bound copy of One Cup at a Time, page by page, reliving moments that had once been heavy and now shimmered with new light. "You know," Catherine whispered, tracing a finger over the cover, "your dad would have loved this." They hadn't spoken of him in a while, not because they didn't remember, but because sometimes it still hurt. Ellie rested her head on her mom's shoulder. "Do you think he would have helped too?" "I think," Catherine said, her voice thick, "he would have been pouring lemonade right beside you and probably messing it up." They laughed softly. Max blinked at the ceiling. "Do you think this story is over?" Ellie shook her head. "No, I think we just turned a page." Outside, the evening breeze rustled the leaves like distant applause. And in the quiet that followed, the sound of healing filled the room. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like the slow, sure pour of a cup filled with warmth passed from one hand to another. Still helping, still hoping, one cup at a time. By midsummer, the lemonade stand was more than a neighborhood fixture. It had become a quiet legend. Tourists passing through the small town sometimes asked if it was real, if that viral story from last year was actually true. They expected something polished, something corporate by now. What they found instead was still just a folding table, a cardboard sign, refreshed but hand-painted, and two kids who never let it become about fame or branding. Ellie had started rotating helpers. She called them kindness shifts, a little hour here and there for other kids to learn the rhythm of service. Some came just once, others returned every week. Max had a laminated instruction card now, taped to the underside of the table, detailing how to stir the lemonade, how to welcome someone who seemed nervous, and most importantly, how to really listen. "You don't have to fix anything," it read in Max's blocky handwriting. "Just care. That's the whole job." One of those summer afternoons, a boy named Braden stood behind the stand beside Ellie. He was new, shy, quiet, with sleeves that covered half his hands. Ellie didn't ask questions. She just showed him how to line the cups up and when to refill the pitcher. After an hour or so of watching and helping, he finally spoke. "My mom's been sick," he said, "and she sleeps a lot. I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what." Ellie handed him the cup she'd just poured. "This is something." Braden looked at it like she'd handed him gold. "Do you think it helps?" She smiled. "It helped us. It still does." By evening, Braden had asked to come again next week. People began calling the Brooks home the house that lemonade built, though the apartment remained humble, the furniture modest. They'd considered moving once, but Catherine had shaken her head. "This place holds every chapter," she'd said. "You don't walk away from the soil that grew you." Instead, they repainted. They added curtains. They framed Ellie's sketches and Max's thank you notes and turned their small living room into a gallery of reminders that joy and healing could bloom anywhere. Catherine had been asked to speak at a school board meeting in September. Someone had submitted their story to a local education committee, and now they wanted her to talk about resilience, about raising kids in crisis who didn't become statistics, but symbols. She stood in a borrowed blazer, hands trembling slightly behind the podium, and told the room what it meant to pawn a wedding ring because you had no other choice. What it meant to hear your child quietly say, "We'll fix it, Mom," and then actually go out and do it. She ended with a line she hadn't planned to say, one that felt like it came from a deeper place. "My kids didn't just sell lemonade," she said. "They sold belief. In me, in each other, in something better. And when a community chose to buy it, they bought back more than a ring. They bought back our future." The room gave her a standing ovation. One board member left in tears. By autumn, Ellie's book had been picked up by a small publisher. They changed nothing. The hand-drawn sketches remained. The quotes were untouched. Even the dedication stayed exactly as Ellie wrote it. "To Max, you were the brave one. To Mom, you were always worth the ring. To anyone who ever thought they were too small to matter, you're not. At the book launch downtown, Catherine stood in the back of the store, tears on her cheeks, while Ellie signed her name with careful loops and offered every child who approached a free lemon-shaped sticker. Max signed his name too, though his looked more like a smiley face with legs. And then, on a Wednesday that began like any other, the past came quietly knocking. Ellie was helping Max finish a math worksheet at the kitchen table when a knock sounded at the door. Not hurried, not loud, just steady. Catherine opened it. A man stood there, early 40s, hair thinning, dressed like someone who had driven a long way in silence. His hand shook as he held out a small box. "Is this—" Catherine started, her breath catching. The man looked down. "I don't expect anything," he said. I heard the story. My sister sent it to me. I didn't know how to reach out before, but I kept the box. I never pawned it." He opened the lid. Inside sat the matching band to Catherine's wedding ring, her ex-husband's, the one she thought he'd taken and sold without a second thought. "I never let go of it," he said quietly. "I just didn't think I had the right to offer it back, until now." Catherine couldn't speak. She took the box with trembling hands, looking down at the band. It wasn't about wanting him back. It wasn't about nostalgia. It was closure, a missing piece returned not to rekindle the past, but to lay it finally to rest. She nodded. "Thank you." He left without asking to come in. That was right. That was fair. Later, Catherine slipped the band beside her own on the kitchen table, and Ellie picked them both up. "We should do something with them," she said. Max nodded. "Bury them like a time capsule?" Catherine smiled. "Maybe we keep them where they are, a pair of circles that remind us what broke and what healed." The holidays returned with grace. That December they held a new event, a night of light. They served warm cider and hung glowing paper lanterns on strings between lampposts, each lantern bearing the name of someone who'd been helped or who had helped. Walter's name was the first one. Braden's mom, who was now in remission, helped them hang his. The street was lined with quiet reverence as the lanterns danced gently in the breeze, soft light flickering across hopeful faces. Catherine watched her children in the middle of it all, each holding lanterns high. "Do you think it ends?" Ellie asked, her voice soft. Catherine pulled her close. "No, honey. Stories like this don't end. They just keep pouring." Winter melted slowly into spring, and with it, the Brooks family entered another year, different now, not just from where they had started, but in the way they saw the world and their place in it. The lemonade stand returned to its familiar sidewalk as the days warmed, the old table set up with practiced ease, the updated sign now laminated against rain and time. Ellie added a small vase of wildflowers to the corner of the table, a nod to her mom's favorite bloom, daisies. Max adjusted the pricing sheet, though the cost remained the same, 50 cents. Always 50 cents. Not because of inflation, not because of business, but because that price had come to mean something more, something accessible, something sacred. They had been planning something for weeks now, quietly, deliberately. Ellie, Max, and Catherine had spoken late into the night about how they might use what had grown around them, the momentum, the story, the attention, not for themselves, but for others. So they formed the Lemonade Foundation. It wasn't a corporation, not yet. It wasn't flashy, and it didn't have a website that could crash from traffic. It started instead with handwritten forms and a community hall bulletin board. Their goal was simple: help kids, help people. One idea at a time, one project, one cause. Their first grant went to a girl named Jasmine, who wanted to start a weekend book club for kids with dyslexia. The second helped a fifth grader named Leo buy art supplies for a hospital children's ward. Each child applied with a note written in their own words. Each was read aloud in their kitchen with cookies and discussion. Ellie and Max funded them with proceeds from their monthly lemonade events and the small honorariums Ellie now earned from school visits. People tried to give more. Corporations reached out. One brand offered to buy the rights to the stand's image, proposing packaging lemonade under the Lemonade for Love logo. Catherine declined. "We're not for sale," she said simply. "We're already bought and paid for with kindness." They kept it local, personal, human. In early May, Ellie received an envelope addressed in blocky handwriting. There was no return address, only a small lemon sticker on the seal. Inside was a letter. "Dear Ellie and Max, my name is Alondra. I'm 12. I read about you in a library book last month. I don't have a stand, but I give away muffins every Saturday in front of our shelter. My mom helps me. I wanted you to know because you helped me believe I could. Also, one of the muffins is lemon. I call it Ellie's Lemon Hope. Thank you for helping kids like me feel brave. Love, Alondra." Max made her a Citizen Lemonade Hero badge out of cardboard and gold paint. They mailed it with a letter of their own, inviting her to join the foundation as a junior ambassador. Alondra's picture arrived a week later, her grin wide, badge pinned to her overalls, a tray of muffins in her hands. On the first day of summer break, Catherine stood at the edge of the street, watching as her kids served another long line of smiling customers. The air buzzed with conversation, the clink of quarters, the soft thump of music from a speaker someone had brought. The mayor had stopped by earlier, just to say hello. The principal of the elementary school now volunteered monthly. And the teenager who used to scoff at the whole thing? He'd brought his band to play covers while people sipped lemonade in plastic chairs. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a movement. Catherine felt something tug in her chest. Not grief, not worry, but the ache that comes with witnessing grace in motion. She glanced at her wedding ring, the same one she had worn through every phase of this journey, the one that had been lost, then found, then redeemed not through a loan, but through love. A few minutes later, Max ran up with a cup in hand. "This one's for you," he said, holding it out. Catherine took it. "Why, thank you, sir." "It's got extra lemon," he said, "because you're the reason we squeezed any of this in the first place." She pulled him close and kissed his forehead. That pun was terrible. "I know," he beamed. Later that night, the family gathered in the living room, feet up, dishes still drying in the sink. Ellie pulled her sketchbook into her lap and began doodling idly as the summer air flowed through open windows. Catherine looked over. "What's the next story?" Ellie paused. "I'm thinking, maybe not about us this time. Maybe about someone else. A new kid, different town, but still lemonade. Still hope." Max perked up. "Do they have a dog?" "Obviously," Ellie replied. "A lemon-colored one named Biscuit." Catherine leaned back with a quiet smile. And in that moment, beneath soft light, with the windows open and stories forming in pencil lines, she realized this was it. This was the ending they never knew they needed, one not filled with grand speeches or a ribbon-cutting finale, but with peace and purpose, and the soft certainty that what they had started together would ripple outward long after the stand had packed up, long after the last drop of lemonade was poured, long after the final coin clinked into the box. Because love, once poured freely, always finds another cup to fill. And in a quiet little town, on an ordinary street, a pair of kids once sold lemonade, not to make a fortune, but to buy back a piece of their family. And in doing so, they bought something much bigger. A future. One cup at a time, always. The summer rolled on, gentle and golden, stretching out like a long, sun-warmed sigh. Mornings in the Brooks household began not with the tension of uncertainty, but with the slow unfolding of routines they had carved from patience and persistence. The miracle was not just in what had happened, the ring, the story, the foundation, but in how normal life had become beautiful again. Ellie woke early now, not from anxiety, but from purpose. Her book had gone into a second national printing, and a local illustrator had reached out to collaborate on a sequel. But more than the growing stack of letters from children across the country or the school invites, or even the publishing accolades. What thrilled her most was the sense that the story hadn't ended with her. The Lemonade Foundation had quietly expanded. 10 new children in different states now operated their own stands under the name, each with a unique goal: helping foster kids with backpacks for school, raising funds for a neighbor's medical bills, or simply offering free drinks and warm smiles in places where hope was scarce. One boy in Nebraska sent a video message to Max, beaming beside his folding table. "My name's River," he said proudly. "I read your story and asked my grandpa to help me start a stand. Today we raised $60 to buy blankets for the shelter. I want to be like you guys when I grow up." Max had cried when he watched it. He tried not to let Ellie see, but she knew. Not because he sniffled or wiped his face, but because of the way he sat a little taller afterward. As if the legacy he was building wasn't about lemonade anymore, but about who he'd become. Catherine had quietly handed off more hours at the office and taken a part-time position with the local youth services board. They wanted her insight, her experience, her grit. She sat on panels now, offered input on school programs, and helped rewrite the handbook on how to reach children facing crisis with more than just statistics. Her voice mattered, not because she had degrees or titles, but because she had lived what so many others only theorized. And then, one Sunday morning in late August, something unexpected happened again. They were gathered at the stand for their monthly Community Day. The setup had expanded. 2 folding tables now, a few crates turned into makeshift seats, and a board of thank you notes laminated and hung on a string between the trees. Ellie manned the register, Max poured lemonade like a pro, and Catherine wandered with a clipboard, taking down ideas from visitors who wanted to be involved. A black SUV pulled up quietly along the curb. Nothing flashy, no entourage. The man who stepped out looked around mid-40s, sharp navy blazer over jeans, sunglasses tucked into the collar. He approached with a kind of quiet hesitation, not the nervous kind, but the kind that comes from reverence. "You must be Ellie," he said. She looked up, blinking. "Yes, sir." He extended a hand. "My name's Adam. I'm the guy from the car, the one who stopped traffic that day." Catherine, overhearing, turned and froze. So did Max. "You were real?" he asked in awe. Adam chuckled softly. "I promise." For a long time they had wondered about him. The man in the sleek car who handed over 3 crisp 50s asked for nothing and left before they even knew what had happened. He had become a kind of legend, a ghost of generosity. Until now. "I never forgot you," he said, looking at Ellie, then at Catherine. "I kept thinking about that day. The way you held that toy car, the look in your eyes. Something told me you weren't just selling lemonade." "You helped us save our family," Catherine said quietly. Adam shook his head. "No, you did that. I just had the privilege of watching it happen." He paused, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a miniature replica of a toy car. Red. Plastic. The doors still opened. "I kept this," he said, placing it gently on the table. "It sat on my desk ever since. I never knew why. But then I read the book, watched the story unfold, and I realized maybe it was the first time I'd bought something that changed my life." Max reached for the toy, lifting it gently. "It looks just like ours." Adam nodded. "I had one when I was your age, before life got complicated, before I stopped believing that small things could matter." Ellie tilted her head. "Do you believe again?" Adam's eyes shimmered. "Because of you, yes." He stayed for an hour, bought 4 cups of lemonade, took a photo with the family in front of the stand, and before he left, he handed Catherine a folded check. "This is not a favor," he said. "This is an investment. In the foundation, in every kid you've helped. Believe they matter." Catherine unfolded it, breath-catching. $100,000. Adam met her gaze. "My company does well, but this is what I want my money to do." That night the family sat together in stunned silence. Max finally broke it. "Can we help more kids now?" Ellie nodded slowly. "We can help hundreds." Catherine didn't speak. She just held their hands tightly, her heart echoing with the same beat it had the day she first slipped her wedding ring back on. Only now, the weight was different. Not of grief, of fullness. The foundation grew, not into a corporation, not into a trend, but into a movement of intentional kindness. Dozens of kids, hundreds of stands, one unspoken rule: you must be willing to serve with your whole heart, even if all you have is a picture and a dream. And in their town, still small, still humble, the original lemonade stand remained. Visitors came often, sometimes by accident, sometimes on pilgrimage. They'd take photos, meet the family, and leave with more than just a drink. Because what Ellie and Max had built wasn't just a business or a gesture. It was proof. Proof that one good choice could ripple across years. Proof that redemption was possible. Proof that love, when poured without fear, never runs dry. And so they kept going. One story at a time, one child, one ring, one miracle. One cup at a time, forever. Summer gave way to fall again, the leaves painting the streets with golden light and crisp possibility. The stand's original table, now weathered but cherished, was replaced not because it broke, but because Max insisted on donating it to a new stand in a town 2 states over. "It's lucky," he'd have said. "It'll help them start right." In its place, they built a new one, together. It was sturdier, polished, carved with the initials EM plus MB along the side. Ellie designed a small plaque for it, too, tucked under the lip of the table, where only someone truly looking would find it. It read, "Born from need, raised by love, poured into the world." By now, the Lemonade Foundation had helped fund 137 micro-projects, what Ellie began calling little big ideas. Each one run by a kid, each one deeply personal. A stand in Minnesota raised enough for hearing aids for a classmate. One in Georgia paid for adoption fees for 3 shelter dogs. Another in Ohio helped repair a broken wheelchair. At first, Catherine tried to track them all in a spreadsheet, but soon there were too many. So she bought a map, a big one. They pinned each project with tiny yellow flags. It hung above the couch, a constellation of compassion, and Max liked to trace the lines between each flag with his finger, murmuring, "It's like we're building a galaxy." Ellie, now 13, had matured in ways no one quite expected. She still laughed easily, still teased Max, but she walked with the poise of someone who had carried something important and learned not to drop it. She'd begun working on a full-length book, part memoir, part guide, for kids who wanted to start their own kindness projects. The working title? How to Change the World with Lemons. A publisher had already expressed interest. Catherine sometimes found herself staring at her children and wondering how they'd grown so quickly. But when she watched them interact, handing out warm cups, showing new volunteers how to fold the napkins just right, explaining their mission with such fierce simplicity, it didn't feel like she'd lost her babies. It felt like she'd helped raise 2 light-bringers. One chilly evening in October, they held a reunion. They invited every local kid who had helped with the stand over the last 2 years, every family they'd met through their projects, every teacher and neighbor who had stopped by or given $1 or passed along a kind word. The flyer read, 2 years, 1 stand, countless hearts. The community center filled with laughter, lemon-scented cookies, and photo collages from every corner of their journey. There was even a short documentary played on a borrowed projector, compiled by a college student who had seen the viral clip as a sophomore and made it her senior thesis. People stood shoulder to shoulder watching footage of that first rainy day. The moment the car stopped, the way Ellie and Max had run to the pawn shop with the crumpled dollar bills. When the video ended, the room stayed silent for a moment. Then applause thundered like a wave. Catherine stood at the front beside her kids, holding their hands. "I don't have a speech," she said simply. A crooked cardboard sign. A lemonade stand no one stopped for. Two kids fighting to buy back their mom's wedding ring, her last piece of hope before life swallowed it. Then one car stopped, and everything changed. What began as a desperate summer hustle turned into a viral movement, saving not just a ring, but an entire community's belief in love. From anonymous checks to a foundation helping kids nationwide, this isn't just a story about lemonade. It's about how two children proved kindness can ripple forever, one cup at a time. The cardboard sign was crooked, hand-lettered, in bold marker strokes that wobbled with the effort of little fingers. "Lemonade, 50C," it read, and just below it, in smaller, shakier letters, "Help us buy back Mom's ring." It leaned against a rusted fold-out table that had seen better days, draped with a wrinkled yellow cloth and flanked by two mismatched lawn chairs. A large glass pitcher of lemonade, pale and sweating in the July sun, sat in the center, along with a stack of plastic cups and a blue tin cash box that rattled with a few lonely coins. 10-year-old Ellie stood behind the table, chin lifted, with a brave kind of determination that didn't quite match the nerves twitching in her small hands. She smoothed her hand-me-down t-shirt, pink and faded with a peeling unicorn decal, and looked to her little brother. Max, only 7, was already pouring their first cup of the morning with solemn purpose, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried not to spill. They had been out here since 9. The sidewalk in front of their apartment complex in suburban New Jersey wasn't exactly bustling, but it was all they had. Cars passed occasionally, slowing only at the intersection or to avoid the pothole that never seemed to get fixed. Most people didn't even glance at the kids or their sign. A few offered smiles tinged with pity, but no one had stopped yet. Ellie glanced at Max. He was shorter, scrawny even, with shaggy brown hair and big eyes that always seemed a little too serious for his age. Right now he was watching the road like a soldier on duty. "Think anyone will stop today?" he asked, not looking away. "They will," Ellie said, trying to sound confident. "We just need to stay out here long enough. Someone will." Max nodded, but his shoulders drooped just a little. Ellie noticed. She wanted to say more, something to lift him up. But she didn't have the words, not today. Instead, she picked up the old poster board sign and propped it more upright, trying to catch the attention of the next car that passed.